Okay, Chris Peaks back with Brandon Moseley for our BCS State of Alabama contest. We got former Congressman Mo Brooks here with us, who is running for his old House District 20 seat. Is that right?
Well, it's the same geographic area, but I was elected to House District 10 and 18, two different districts, and in each one, the first Republican elected in history.
Okay. Congressman, they have spared nothing in the incessant attacks against you, from saying you've never accomplished anything to you was one of the biggest tax increases in as representatives. You want to take a few minutes and just kind of go over some of these lies that's been said about you?
Well, the gist of their approach from day one has been to fabricate and to engage in character assassination. Personally, I wish that they didn't do it that way, but they can run their campaign however they want to. But what it does is it puts us into an explanatory mode where we have to provide the evidence so that the voters know the fabrications, the lies, when they see them, so that they aren't fooled. So you're right. From day one, character assassination. Lomax and his team proudly proclaim that I have done nothing and been a total failure the entire time I've been in public office. And that's categorically and demonstrably untrue. Just by way of example, I helped build 7 overpasses on Memorial Parkway. I helped build I-565. I helped build Cecil Ashburn over Blevins Gap. I'm responsible for getting the gymnasium built down in South Huntsville for our kids to use over at Fern Bell. Responsible for helping build 2 different greenways and also 2 different parks that our kids and parents can enjoy. So there are a lot of accomplishments like that. On an education level, appropriated over $1.5 million to local PTAs of our public schools so that they would have the materials and supplies needed for the kids to better learn in the environments they were in. That's just on the physical production side. And then you've got the votes that have been cast, and I'll use as an example border security. I've personally been responsible for killing one open borders bill, amnesty. It was called the Senate Gang of Eight bill under the Obama administration. If anyone wants proof, just ask Jeff Sessions. He'll verify it. And then during the Paul Ryan speakership, I personally, me solo, negotiated a signed agreement with House Speaker Paul Ryan that effectively killed all amnesty bills during his term as Speaker of the House. Another thing that I was able to accomplish as a congressman, the Democrats got attached to the National Defense Authorization Act, an amendment that would allow illegal aliens to compete for and take military service opportunities from our American kids at our military academies, like West Point, at the Naval Academy, at the Air Force Academy, Coast Guard, just go down the list. And I was able to have that stripped from the National Defense Authorization Act on the House floor. And it was a knockdown fight, quite frankly, with the Democrats and some of our more liberal Republicans to win that victory. But there are lots of things out there that I've been able to accomplish. And of course, Lomax doesn't have anything that is anywhere near the comparison of successes that I've had. So he has to try to tear me down. And that's what he's been doing from day one.
Congressman Brooks, I mean, for those of us that are old enough to remember what Huntsville was, like in the early 80s, is it, I mean, no area in the state has grown or has had the income. I mean, with the possible exception of Baldwin County, I mean, Huntsville has outpaced, and your districts have outpaced the rest of the state, maybe by a factor of 20. I mean, you're basically, we didn't lose a congressman largely because of the Huntsville area, y'all's growth in the past decade. How do they square? I mean, are they just saying that all this happened with the state representative, congressman asleep, and county commissioners asleep at the wheel?
Well, when I entered this race, I thought we'd have a nice public policy debate about certain things, border security, taxes, capital improvements, uh, special interest versus public interest, political action committee money, gambling, things of that nature, public policy discussions where both of us would state facts about what we have done or not done, our positions on issues. This campaign has been the furthest from that of any campaign that I've ever been involved in. I've never been up against an opponent such as this one who did not seem to care whether he was telling the truth or not telling the truth. But you've just pointed out a very significant achievement that I've had during my term in office here in Huntsville, Alabama. I was elected to the legislature 4 times. I was elected to the county commissioner 4 times. I was elected to the United States Congress 6 times. My reelection percentages, if you do the math, there's 11 of those, and general elections averaged 81%. And that's because the public liked the job that I was doing on their behalf. And during that period of time, I've played a role. I'm not going to say that I was the person, because we have a team up here, a group of people who work together to accomplish the kind of successes that we have had, where our Democrats and our Republicans, when it comes to our community, we work together to try to advance our mutual interests and the betterment of our community as a whole. And so during this entire time that I've been in office, as you stated, Huntsville has excelled. We've done not only probably better in producing jobs, than high-paying jobs, than any other community in the state of Alabama, but I think you've got a pretty good argument that we have led the nation in the production of high-quality, high-paying, academic-oriented or blue-collar-oriented jobs. And I played my role in that. And part of that is infrastructure improvement. Part of that is, say, with respect to Space Command, meeting with every general who had come into my office and reminding them when they're asking something from me on the House Armed Services Committee that Space Command coming to Huntsville, where it is deserved, is high on my priority list. So every general who came into my office with the Army or the Air Force, Navy not so much, although I might mention it to them too, but of course we don't have any naval facilities here in the Tennessee Valley. But I would emphasize how important Space Command is to our community and how we can better serve the needs of Space Command better than anybody else in the United States of America. And so the people at the Pentagon, they knew what this congressman from the Tennessee Valley was standing for and expecting. Same thing with the Trump administration. And President Trump has been highly complimentary of my work in trying to ensure that Space Command came to our community. And then when President Trump's term of office expired in 2021, I was one of the ones leading the fight, not just me, but part of it with Robert Adeholt, with Mike Rogers, other Alabama congressmen, to ensure that we kept at bay the efforts of the state of Colorado to take Space Command from Huntsville and Redstone Arsenal in the state of Alabama and put it in Colorado. And so for the first 2 years of the Biden administration, I individually and we collectively were successful in making sure that Space Command stayed at Redstone Arsenal. Now, unfortunately, after I left the United States Congress, I retired from the House of Representatives. The Biden administration and the Colorado delegation saw an opportunity and they moved it back to Colorado. But fortunately, with the second election of President Trump, it was moved back to Huntsville because, quite frankly, Huntsville and Redstone Arsenal is where our national defense needs on Space Command type activities can best be met.
Congressman, they've launched attacks at you about raising taxes too, and that's not exactly true either, is it?
Anybody who knows my record on taxes know that that is a total and complete fabrication on the part of James Lomax. I think I've got a pretty good argument that I am the #1 best tax fighter elected official at the county, state, and federal level of anybody in Alabama history. By way of example, I've voted to cut taxes by more than $2.5 trillion. That's over 1,000 times the number that James Lomax boasts of, 1,000 to 1. Actually, it's closer to about 1,400 or 1,500 to 1, the ratio between my tax cutting and his tax cutting. Then you've got by way of example, the Alabama Taxpayers Defense Fund, ranking me number one out of 140 legislators when I was a legislator in the fight against higher taxes. You've got the National Taxpayers Union ranking Mo Brooks number one out of our members of the Alabama delegation, and consistently in the top 10%, not only with the National Taxpayers Union, but also Citizens Against Government Waste. So I've got a long-term record of fighting taxes. Then you've got James Lomax coming at me with this bogus claim that I've raised taxes on the people I represent, and he claims 100 such tax increases. That is absolutely false. And what I do is I ask people to please think about what you saw with your own eyes when Bob Riley's $1.4 billion tax increase was being pushed on the public. Who was it that helped lead the fight to kill that tax increase? Mo Brooks. How do you know that? Because I represented the anti-tax forces in the statewide televised debates. That's not something a big tax and spender does, but I did that. So you can believe your own eyes, or you can believe James Lomax. Now, this list of 100 tax increases that he claims that I voted for, what he doesn't tell people is that none of those, zero, raised taxes on the people that I represented. Now, you may ask, well, how is that possible? Well, it's real simple. 80 of those 100 bills, they were local bills that affected just one county. They were requested by that county of the legislature because we don't have home rule in the state of Alabama, so they have to go through the state legislature to get a lot of what should be just locally voted county commission or city tax increases. And they came to the Alabama legislature, these 80 counties, and they said, look, we need to raise taxes for this, that, or the other. And they'd have their wish list of things. Their delegation in the legislature would be unanimous in making that request. And all 80 of those tax increases, which were local in nature, they related just to one county, and none of them related to the people I represented. None of them imposed taxes on Madison County. And I should add that allowing these local communities to have these tax increases that they were asking for, that helped stop statewide tax increases and stop tax increases on Madison County, because the alternative would be to raise statewide taxes and then use those taxes that we pay in my community to subsidize those counties that don't pay their own way. So what I did helped stop tax increases on my community. So that's 80 of them. Then you've got another 10 that are claimed to be tax increases, which in fact are either tax cuts or wholly unrelated to tax increases. By way of example, mandatory automobile insurance. That's got nothing to do with taxes. You can debate whether that's a good thing or a bad thing to require that people who are on our roads have the automobile insurance necessary to protect those that they hit and injure. Okay, you can have a debate about that, but you can't have a debate over whether that's a tax increase. So all of these things that are on Lomax's list, none of them raise taxes on the people I represent.
Congressman, I live in House District 50, and we've got it's an open seat. We have a competitive deal between Bill Morris and Brian Newell. The American Conservatives Fund has taken the side of Morris. I probably receive 40 or 50 mailers. Sometimes I get two on the same day. Your race is much the same, where outside gambling interests are spending vast sums of money. I think this is not just, your district and District 50. I mean, they're targeting conservatives all across the state. When they take the side of an incumbent, it's generally a more moderate Republican. When they oppose an incumbent, it tends to be a more conservative, anti-gambling incumbent. How much money has the gambling interest poured into the state, and what is their expected payout for this?
Well, let's be clear about what we're talking about. They only care about one thing, and that is how much money they can get by fleecing Alabama citizens. That's it, okay? And they are investing $45 million to try to buy the Alabama legislature so that they will be able to get through the legislature gambling bills that legalize all casino gambling in the state of Alabama, that legalize all sports betting in the state of Alabama, and in effect, over the long haul, will legalize all gambling in the state of Alabama, turning Alabama into Las Vegas East. That is what they want. Now, the $45 million is laundered in two pipelines. One is through the Sports Betting Alliance. And if you go to the Sports Betting Alliance's website, they will tell you that that is their goal, what I just stated. They want legalized casino gambling and they want sports betting. Okay. It's on their website. And they put $2 million, they being the gambling moguls who are out of state or even out of country. Bet365, that is a part of the Sports Betting Alliance, they're headquartered in Europe. Then you've got DraftKings, which is out of Boston. You've got FanDuel. You've got Fanatics. These are ones we've identified. And then you've got who knows what others. But the $2.15 million that is laundered to the Sports Betting Alliance is then laundered again from the Sports Betting Alliance to the SVNB PAC, a nice innocuous name that nobody has a clue as to what they are, in Montgomery, or the North Alabama PAC in Huntsville. And then those two PACs are laundering the money again to various candidates. You've got over 75 legislators who have received on average $8,000 to $10,000 from this 2.15 pipeline of laundered money from these gambling moguls, all of whom are out of state. And from an economic standpoint, let me emphasize, because they're out of state, that means that the profits that they make, which can be expected to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, also all goes out of state. That's siphoned out of our economy. It's no longer circulating in our economy. It has a depressing effect on our economy. It will decrease our income taxes, our sales tax collections. It will increase our social costs because of the gambling losses from people who can't afford it. And it's going to have a significant adverse effect both on our ability to govern, to provide services that people want, and it's also going to have an adverse effect on the economy as a whole and whether we have jobs, okay? Particularly mom and pop shops, the small businesses that rely on discretionary income that won't be there anymore because the gambling moguls have taken it. That's what we're looking at. Now, the other pipeline, what you focused on was the American Conservative Fund, is $43 million. $19 million from DraftKings, $19 million from, I think it was FanDuel, then another $4 million from either Fanatics or whichever one, okay? But it totals up from these gambling moguls up to $43 million. They created two different laundering devices, two different political action committees to make it look like these are conservative groups when they aren't. The first one that they named was Win for America. So that pipeline, the Win for America pipeline, has $43 million coming from these out-of-state gambling moguls into it. That's verified, Federal Election Commission disclosures. Then of that, 26.6 million goes from Win for America, nice patriotic conservative sounding name that Republicans typically might agree with and fall for if they knew just from appearance what it appears to be. And so that 26.6 million then went to the American Conservative Fund. Keep in mind that the difference between that 43 million and 26.6 million has gone who knows where. Once Win for America starts distributing it to all these different entities, we lose track. We don't know where else it's being laundered and how it's affecting our Alabama elections. But we do know with 26 points. Oh, I should mention in that money that Win for America did not send to the American Conservative Fund, at least 10,000 went to the owners of the SVNB PAC in Montgomery. So that's an example of how they spend it without it going as a part of that 26.6 million. And that 26.6 million, it then starts going out to these vendors and con artists and professional political consultants who devise ways to attack or to promote various candidates, with the only litmus test being whether those candidates are going to vote for legalization of all gambling in the state of Alabama. That's the litmus test, okay? And you guys, you mentioned 40 to 50 mailers. I mean, they're hitting our mailboxes on a daily basis here in House District 20. And I'm not even the number one target. then I'm probably the number 2 target of the out-of-state gambling moguls, because by way of background, folks, I have graduated from Duke University with highest honors in economics. So I know a little bit about what this gambling does, not just the surface stuff. Well, hey, we're going to generate tax revenue for you. We're going to generate some jobs at our casinos for you. I'm talking about the bigger picture, not the little picture by which these gambling moguls reap a huge fortune off of the citizens of the state of Alabama. And the big picture is it's bad for the economy of every place that's ever had it, with the possible exception of Las Vegas, which is a worldwide magnet for gamblers. And even it right now is starting to face some economic difficulties as consumers slowly but surely figure out that the house always wins. I mean, that's not just a saying to be a saying, it's because that's the truth. Over the long haul, the house always wins, and it pays for those profits, pay for all those huge edifices that we call casinos. And that's what they're looking to do here. And the American Conservative Fund, they have no honesty, they have no integrity, they have no desire to tell the truth about anything to anyone in the state of Alabama. Their sole mission is to destroy the reputation of good Alabamians on the one hand, or promote the reputations of Alabamians on the other hand, who will support gambling. And just by way of background, 2024 is when this began in a major way, when House Bills 151 and 152 passed the House of Representatives that in effect would have legalized gambling all over the state of Alabama. And my opponent, James Lomax, voted for that legalization in the state of Alabama. Now, it would take some time, but I guarantee you, over time, all gambling would become legal. That's just the nature of politics. And if you understand politics, you know what the long-term result of this short-term bill might be. So that's it. And, you know, the number 1 target is Rusty Glover down in Mobile. He's running for the Senate. They're probably spending, according to Rusty, in the neighborhood of $750,000 or $1 million against him. It's hard to track. You have to reverse engineer it by looking at what's going on, because they aren't disclosing any of this with the Alabama Secretary of State's office. They're flaunting their noses at our Fair Campaign Practices Act that requires the kind of disclosures where the voters have a better idea of who's behind these various candidates. And I wish our Attorney General and our Secretary of State would enforce the Fair Campaign Practices Act, but to date, for whatever reason, they've not acted as aggressively as needed to be done to protect the citizenry from what is going on.
We're going to go to the next question. Are these pack-to-pack transfers, are they not illegal? And I mean, is the Secretary of State complicit in this, or why are they ignoring this going on and letting our elections being stolen?
Well, I cannot give you a firsthand explanation. I can say that I noted that 15,000 of the Sports Betting Alliance laundered money went to the campaign of Wes Allen. Now, how that affects Wes Allen and his enforcement of our Fair Campaign Practices Act, in as much as it's his office that runs the program, okay? It's his office you go to if you want to file your disclosure reports. It's his office that keeps track of the disclosure reports. You know, I've got some possible ideas. None of them are good, about why the Attorney General and the Secretary of State are not adequately enforcing the Fair Campaign Practices Act with respect to out-of-state gambling moguls, who by far are bringing in more out-of-state money than any entity in the history of the state. I mean, this should be statewide news of the highest order. I don't know in the last 40 years that anything anywhere close to this kind of attempt to purchase the Alabama legislature has ever occurred. And it all goes back to those votes in 2024, when those 2 pro-gambling bills passed the House and then died by just 1 vote in the Alabama Senate. So the gambling moguls are like sharks who smell blood in the water, and they're going in for the kill. And we've got our Attorney General and our Secretary of State who simply aren't protecting the public interest as much as their jobs require them to do.
Congressman, we're in an era where it seems like affordability is a huge issue. People complain with some reason about how high their power bill is, or how much they're spending on gas, or what they're spending on food. You know, marriage rates have plummeted. You know, the age of marriage, has risen to like the highest level pretty much in the country's history. Um, Given the economic stress that the typical American is in, what happens when you get a large portion of that same public addicted to gambling, and all of a sudden, in addition to paying the mortgage and paying the kids, medical needs and buying food for the family, we've got a $2,000 a month or more gambling habit to feed.
Well, you know what happens. You see more families break up because they don't have the money. It's been squandered at the casinos or on your cell phone with sports betting. It's just gone, poof. Psh. And that makes it much more much more difficult for people to own a house. They have to rent because they haven't saved up the money that is necessary to provide the down payment for the equity to purchase a house. You've got a lot of social costs that go up to society when families are now struggling to get food on the table, to get a roof over their heads. And with that, you typically have governmental social services that come into effect. And that triggers the need for higher taxes, which in turn reduces the disposable income of Alabama taxpayers. You've got divorce rates that go up. That's never good almost never good for the kids that are involved in these families that are breaking up. I don't know of a good thing that comes out of the type of gambling that we're talking about, the casinos coming in and getting people addicted. Gambling addiction is a major problem in some parts of the United States, particularly with respect to sports betting. And we just can't afford it. It's all bad. There's nothing good. And that's what our public officials are supposed to do. They're supposed to study the cascading public policy effects of the laws that we enact. And if they're good, then we pass those laws. And if the cascading effects are bad, then we oppose them. But in this instance, $45 million buys a lot of votes. I can tell you right now, if these gambling moguls were not involved in purchasing the hearts, minds, and souls of so many candidates and elected officials, they'd have no chance of passing the bills that they won't pass. But it's the money that is buying these votes, either legally or illegally. And I emphasize and stress the illegally part of it because of history. As you guys probably are aware, we've had a lot of legislators over the decades who have been arrested and convicted for criminal conduct associated with their selling their votes to gambling organizations or activities. And that's bribery. That's corruption under Alabama law and probably every state's laws in the United States of America. And I've seen so many people's lives destroyed because they succumb to the temptation of the money that these gambling moguls offer. And sometimes those offers come from organized crime. And we just don't want that here in our state. We have, by and large, a wholesome state, a family-oriented state. I know I can say that about Huntsville, where I live. We're family-oriented. We're wholesome. We're an attraction to a lot of people. And that's why we get these high-paying jobs in large part is because people are looking for a place that they can raise their kids in the United States of America. And Huntsville, Alabama stands out like a beacon, as does a number of other places in the state of Alabama. And having these casinos, that's a definite downer for these types of people. It is not an upper.
Congressman, I believe that when you first announced that Speaker Ledbetter was the first one that fired the first salvos at you, why are you such a threat to the establishment like the Business Council of Alabama and all these entities?
Well, the special interest groups, quite frankly, they own Montgomery. We, the citizenry, haven't been doing our job, and we've let these special interest groups purchase our government. Simple as that. And I have a reputation for being independent. I think for myself, I represent the general public, not one of those that so easily succumbs to the monetary temptation or the wily ways, the threats, the whispering nice things in your ear, or any of the other temptations that these special interest groups throw at public officials. And quite frankly, I'm probably the most feared conservative in the state of Alabama if you are a special interest that is used to getting your way because you bought it. And I stand between them and a lot of the things that they want. I'll give you we talked about the gambling. Well, my opponent has also received over $180,000 from special interests to either support open borders or want even more cheap foreign labor that undermines the wages of our blue collar workforce in particular, but also includes our white collar workforce. You may recall House Bill 210. That was an attack by these same cheap foreign labor interests that wanted white collar workers. Therefore, they were willing to take money from our kids, divert money from the Education Trust Fund from our kids to subsidize the college education costs of illegal aliens. Well, I want the money that we pay in taxes to take care of our kids and decrease the tuition cost of our kids. I don't want it going to illegal aliens whose first act on American soil is to thumb their nose at our Constitution and our laws, okay? But that's those kind of folks, they don't want Mo Brooks in the legislature because they know that I fight for border security. Then you've got the liberal AEA Teachers Union. They've given $45,000 to my opponent, James Lomax. That's a huge sum from a very liberal organization that over the years has been anti-Republican, whose long-term goal is collective bargaining and strike power, which would hurt our public schools much as it has hurt them in other parts of our country. He's also gotten $55,000 in laundered campaign contributions from Blue Cross Blue Shield, who's laundered it through intermediary PACs into the pockets of James Lomax's campaign. Now, I've got an idea as to what Blue Cross Blue Shield wants in exchange for that money, but I'm not confident enough, not 100% sure, so I don't want to express it, but you can use your imagination. Then you've got another $30,000 coming from the Alabama Trial Lawyers Associations and their members. Now, what do trial lawyers want? Well, they want more lawsuits that cost a lot of people a lot of money. Then you've got another $20,000 that is coming from entities that are related to public utilities like Alabama Power and some others. And what do they want? Well, they want more profit. How do they want to get it? They want higher utility rates, short and sweet. So all of these special interest groups know that I know enough about economics. I know enough about what they're doing. I'm a principled person. I'm a person of integrity. My number one priority is the public interest, not special interest. And there's nothing they can do to shut Mo Brooks up when it comes to fighting for the public interest versus their special interest desire to pad their wallets at public expense.
Congressman Brooks, Medicare and Medicaid is like become the second largest expenditure of the federal government. State government is a partner in the Medicaid portion of it, where about 63% or so is federal dollars, and the state picks up the other 37%, making Medicaid the most expensive item in Alabama's general fund budget. Do we as a state need to do a better job at policing Medicaid and Medicare, especially Medicaid, because it costs us directly, fraud? I think there's only like 3 investigators over at the AG's office, and it's kind of a big state, and there's a lot of people getting those benefits here.
Well, I don't have personal knowledge of anyone who's committing Medicare or Medicaid fraud. I'm not in law enforcement. I haven't been a part of those investigations. But if what we've seen in California and Minnesota is any indicator, then we've got a lot of social services fraud, whether it be Medicaid, Medicare, or something else, in Alabama. And the problem with some or most of these programs is that in Alabama, we're in a pay-as-you-go system. If you're going to spend more money, you either got to take it from something that you declare as a lesser priority, or you got to raise taxes. Simple as that. Okay. And so before we do anything at all about increasing the availability of Medicaid or Medicare, first we've got to make sure that we have been and will continue to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. And you do that by increasing the enforcement staff enough to where they can conduct solid investigations and stamp out the waste and the fraud and abuse that is occurring. And right now, the state of Alabama is not doing that. Hopefully, our citizens are a little bit more honest and less likely to commit that fraud. But the history is it exists. And the history is if we're as bad as Minnesota and California, that it's a huge sum of money. So, we'll have to see how it all plays out. But I agree with the premise of your question, and that is we need far more investigative resources than we have allotted.
Congressman, I know back when you first got in the race, you had like $100,000. Do you know how much has been spent against you, and have you had any more funds come in?
Well, we've had spent over $1 million against me, with roughly half of that coming from the out-of-state gambling moguls. The other half, more or less, coming from special interest political action committees. And I say that in this context, 90% of James Lomax's campaign support has come from special interest political action committees who, quite frankly, demand a quid pro quo for the money that they invest in candidates. 2% has come from citizens of House District 20 that James Lomax claims that he represents. On my side, this is a really unique campaign. It might be the only one in Alabama history or close to it that's operated the way this one is operated. Some state elected officials asked me to run. And, I'm tired of groveling for cash. I don't like it. That, to me, is the most off-putting part of running for public office. So I told them, look, if you guys want me to run, if you think my talents are needed, necessary in Montgomery, then you need to back up what you're asserting by raising $100,000. And it has to be from citizens. It cannot be from special interest political action committees. And lo and behold, they did it. And they notified me of that the day before qualifying. And I'm man of my word, I told them if they raised that money that I would qualify, and I did. Right at the time of qualifying, I sent out some text messages to some people explaining why I was running. And in those text messages, I did ask for contributions. But since then, I have not asked a single person for a campaign contribution. So the money that has come in strictly because the citizenry understands the risks that are involved with the incumbent's allegiance to special interests. And they're motivated on their own, not by me, because I'm not asking them. They're motivated on their own to contribute to my campaign. And quite frankly, I don't know how much citizens have contributed, but it's probably in the neighborhood of, it's no less than 5,000, probably in the neighborhood of 10,000, maybe more than that. And so that's how much we're spending. It's over $1 million in opposition money, primarily from special interest political action committees, versus 105, 110,000 from citizens. And I like that feeling that I get. I'm not beholden to any special interest groups. If the people elect me as their legislator, and my opponent, James Lomax, he can't say that. In fact, it's quite the exact opposite.
Congressman, Alabama's long had reputation, us and Louisiana and a little bit Illinois, as some of the most corrupt. Of course, Minnesota's about to catch up with us as one of the most corrupt states in the country. The Alabama Ethics Commission, you've got like 3 appointed people, and they're generally typically are, retired politicians or judges or something. And then the AG's office, they have their special prosecutions unit. And usually when something big happens, it comes out of the special prosecutions unit, or the FBI gets involved. Like they took down Representatives John Rogers and Plummer for basically taking money from little poor children that play baseball. Um, Do we need to revisit how we do our ethics that, there needs to be a more teeth in this, the dog that hunts for this?
Absolutely. We need to beef up the staff of the Ethics Commission. We need to, in addition to beefing up the staff, we need to empower them to do the kinds of investigations that need to be done. One of the first things is subpoena power. You have to have the kind of investigative tools that you see in a district attorney's office or in the attorney general's office or in our city, county police and deputies or our state troopers or the Alabama Bureau of Investigation. The Ethics Commission has to have the same kind of ability, same kind of tools that they can use to ensure that our government is one of integrity and high ethics. And so I'm 100% for that. That's the way I've tried to conduct myself in the years that I've been in public life. That's probably a big factor in the public having reelected me with an average of 81% of the vote in general elections. And I think in anybody's book who's ever served as a public official, an average of 81% to 19% win margin over 11 different elections, that's pretty doggone good. And high ethics, honesty, integrity, I believe the public is yearning for that. We just need more candidates who will give it to them.
Congressman, we've had you over 40 minutes, and I don't want to take up more of your time because I know you got door knocking. I just had one more question for you. How do you feel going into this? I mean, you bet your chances, and would you like to make a closing statement?
Well, we're running a very lean campaign. It's over $1 million on the special interest side of the coin, and then 110,000 on the public interest side of the coin. And I love the way our campaign has been run. We have a steering committee of about 10 or 15 folks who meet once a week. All of them are volunteers. They're motivated by their love for our community and our state. None of them have any special interest reward that they might be enticed by in order to help my campaign. And I like where we stand, quite frankly. I think the public is slowly but surely, not as fast as I would like, but they're slowly but surely figuring out the difference between my opponent who's aligned with special interests that want to pad their wallets at public expense versus Mo Brooks, whose true motive is public service and doing what's in the best interest of the public. I think the public slowly but surely, if I'm going to focus on just one aspect of this sordid money affair, they're starting to figure out that we've got out-of-state gambling moguls who want to operate a casino in Huntsville, and that's going to have a decided adverse effect on the image that we have created that has attracted so many good people to our community, including so many high-paying jobs. And that's a big contrast between myself and my opponent, who's already voted to legalize casino gambling, sports betting, and other types of gambling throughout Alabama, not just in the city of Huntsville. And that's a big difference. On border security, slowly but surely the public's starting to figure out that we don't need in the legislature someone who's going to want to and did vote to divert our education tax dollars from our kids to subsidize the college educations of illegal aliens. That's the opposite of border security. That's an open borders policy that, in effect, pays illegal aliens to break our laws and to come to our community. And the public doesn't want that. And then on taxes, I've got the best record, in my judgment, of any public official in Alabama history at the city, county, and state level, where I've been proven at each level to have fought tax increases. And that's important in a Republican primary. And then finally, the integrity issue, the honesty issue. You guys have read House Bill 210. Just yesterday, my opponent put out a text that fabricates the claim that the bill, which you can read, it's short, House Bill 210 from 2024, it's like only 2 pages long, and only a paragraph of it is active. The rest of it is repeating the rest of the statute that it seeks to amend. Quite plainly says that you are entitled to apply to our universities for college education and the money that goes with it, just as any other Alabama citizen is, just as any other American citizen is, if you have applied, merely applied for lawful status, not having got it, have applied. And since any illegal alien can apply, that's easy. Then that means every illegal alien is able to get the kinds of taxpayer subsidies that we taxpayers think are important enough to make sure that college tuition isn't too high for our Alabama citizens to be able to afford. So that when we get to the issues, and it's hard because the other side, they're fabricating facts. They're not admitting that this is how they have voted and then justifying that vote with a public policy argument. They're denying that they voted the way they voted. And that's very frustrating. Like I said, I've never come up against a politician who is so earnestly willing to fabricate things in order to enhance his prospects of winning an election. I think the public is starting to figure out that too. And so integrity and honesty, I think, is going to end up favoring me, and the dishonesty and the lack of integrity is going to end up biting James Lomax. All of these things put together make me feel pretty comfortable. The only part that makes me feel uncomfortable is we're being outspent by special interest over $1 million to 110,000. That is a huge lopsided imbalance. And I can only pray that the citizens of House District 20 take the time to do the research, to understand and discern what the truth is. And if they do, then I believe we'll be just fine.
Good luck next Tuesday, Congressman. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you. Y'all have a
Thank you so much for being on.